The larger the number of older brothers that a male has, the higher the probability that he is gay.
It's been seen over and over. I mean, it's really one of the rock solid findings in human sexuality. So the way to emphasize the difference is if a baby boy is born today, if he has no older brothers, his odds of being gay when he grows up is about 2%, right? Pretty low. But if he had one older brother, his odds go up by a third. Okay, 2.6. And if he has two older brothers, they go up a third again. All right, now we're at 3.5. It turns out you got to have like a dozen older brothers just to have a 50-50 chance.
Welcome to the Huberman Lab podcast, where we discuss science and science-based tools for everyday life. I'm Andrew Huberman, and I'm a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine. My guest today is Dr. Mark Breedlove. Dr. Mark Breedlove is a professor of neuroscience at Michigan State University, and he is an expert in how hormones shape the developing brain, in particular, how they influence sexual orientation. As you'll learn today, the amount of testosterone that a fetus is exposed to while in the mother has a profound impact not only on the ratio of finger lengths, yes, you heard that right, but it also plays a meaningful role in sexual orientation. And in fact, there's a correlation there between finger length ratios and sexual orientation. Now, as wild as that may seem, that result has now been confirmed many times over in humans and in animals. And today, you'll understand why. You'll also learn that every time a woman is pregnant with a male, there's a biological trace of that, which biases the likelihood that her next male offspring will be either heterosexual or homosexual. Now, I know this sounds really out there, but these are extremely solid biological findings for which the mechanisms are now understood for both animals and humans. It turns out that the hormones we are exposed to while we are in the womb shape not only the preference for whether somebody is attracted to males or females, but also an aversion to the opposite, meaning there appears to be the formation of circuits for being attracted to one sex and not attracted to the other. Today, you'll also learn how hormones impact the amount of rough and tumble or social play that kids engage in, the interplay between nature and nurture in shaping male versus female differences, and sexual orientation. Dr. Breedlove is one of the long-standing pioneers in this field of how hormones shape brain development and psychology. We approach these questions through the lens of biology and statistics. So today's is not a political discussion. Instead, it's a discussion about what is known and what is still not known about this profound aspect of our species. Oh, and we also talk about gay rams. Yes, that's a real thing, and it has important implications for everything we've mentioned thus far. By the end of today's episode, you'll surely think differently about the relationship between hormones and brain development, nature and nurture, and romantic partner choice. Before we begin, I'd like to emphasize that this podcast is separate from my teaching and research roles at Stanford. It is, however, part of my desire and effort to bring zero cost to consumer information about science and science-related tools to the general public. In keeping with that theme, today's episode does include sponsors. And now for my discussion with Dr. Mark Breedlove. Dr. Mark Breedlove, welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Very exciting.
Been 25 years since we stood in the same physical space.
I know. How can that be possible when I feel like, just saw you a few days ago, but then...
Well, you look great. You look the same, so we can talk longevity protocols at the end. But
I'm trying to have a blonde look in my hair, apparently. So
well, I've wanted to have you on this podcast since I launched it because you work on one of the most interesting things in the world, which is how and why people become who they are, and how hormones play a role there, how genes play a role there. If you're willing, I'd like to jump from the high dive to the deep end first, right off.
All right.
Let's talk about this finger length ratios sexual orientation study that you published, and somehow I landed on that paper. That's not why I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it because it's an incredibly interesting set of findings. Other people have done the same-ish experiments, and there's a whole context there about how hormones influence sexual orientation independent of behavior.
We need to step back a little bit for the context. One thing that your listeners might not know is, in the year 2000, there was still a lot of people who regarded same-sex orientation as a choice, a lifestyle choice. That was the political combination of words that meant you could disapprove of people because they were attracted to the same sex. Of course, I'm at Berkeley. I didn't have any truck with such notions at all. And I've always been convinced that sexual orientation is not a choice. And there's a exercise I do in class where so I'm going to put you to it. Now, so remember the first time you had a crush, right? It might have been someone on TV, might have been someone at a playground, et cetera. So think about that, and I want you to tell me about how old you were at the time in a moment. My guess is it was before puberty.
Yeah, I was 6.
Yeah,
And I hit
same
puberty
here.
somewhere starting around 14.
So it had nothing to do with puberty, right? It was this thing that happened, and I'll share my experience. So I'm about 6 or 7. I couldn't have been more than 7. And Marilyn Monroe is on TV. I'm dating myself, and there's a close up, with that face and the mole, et cetera. And afterwards, I'm just so agitated. And I know nothing about sex. I remember I had a hard time going to sleep. So it was like something about this was really agitating me. And I didn't choose to have that reaction. And my guess is that whatever sex you had your first crush on, that's the one you were going to be attracted to the rest of your life.
Yeah,
right?
it's been constant.
Yeah. Well, so this idea that it was a choice, that always just seemed so absurd to me. On the other hand, even though, I've been doing animal research with giving hormones early in life and seeing what it did to the nervous system, et cetera. And every time I wrote an NIH grant, I said, well, the effect of early hormones may be important for human behavior, but to tell you the truth, I never actually believed that, right? It was just, I just wanted to justify it because it seemed to me that we are so sensitive to social influences. And we have this long stretch of time where our brains are still growing at a fetal rate of growth until like 9 or 10 years of age, and we're taking in so much information. And think of what a heterosexual world is, right? I mean, all those Disney movies with Prince Charming and et cetera. And so it always seemed to me that social learning would be more than enough to explain why 95% of people are straight. But that doesn't mean that was a choice, and it doesn't mean that they would even be aware of what the social influence was. So my example is, I speak English. It's I'm hopelessly monolingual, only language I speak. Well, I don't remember learning English, and I certainly didn't choose to learn English, but I'm sure that it's English because of social influences, right? So that was where I stood on the question of sexual orientation until 1998, 1999, when this fellow at University of Texas, Dennis McFadden, came out with a paper where it really made me think that prenatal testosterone might have an effect after all, despite my expectations. And this was looking at otoacoustic emissions. Do you want to talk about those?
These are people's ears making noise.
Yeah, I mean, right now in this studio, if I shut up for a moment, your ears will continue to make little popping sounds that you're not aware of because having grown up with it, the brain stopped you from perceiving those long ago. Well, but if Dennis puts you in a soundproof room and puts a very sensitive microphone in your ear, he'll hear these pops. And I won't get into the acoustics of why that's a good thing, right? It helps you to focus on the sounds you want to hear. But what Dennis knew is there's a sex difference in how many of these otoacoustic emissions are being made. Girls make more, and it's present at birth. So Dennis comes out with a strange study. I mean, who would do such a thing? Where he proposes, well, since the sex difference is present at birth, it might reflect prenatal testosterone. And so he measured the otoacoustic emissions in straight men and gay men and straight women and lesbians. And he reports that compared to straight women, the lesbians have fewer of these otoacoustic emissions than straight women. It's like, well, what? How would that happen? I couldn't think of any way to explain that except that, well, the lesbians might have been exposed to more prenatal testosterone than straight women before birth. And I don't know how to explain that except to say, well, maybe prenatal testosterone, maybe if you're exposed to that before birth, you're more likely to be attracted to women when you grow up. Which, well, that might explain why 95% of men are attracted to women, right? Because they're all exposed to prenatal testosterone. So this oddball study really gets me to thinking that maybe there's something to that. But thought I'll forget it. I'm still working with my rats and Parameciscus and Siberian hamsters and stuff. I'm happily doing that. And then, I remember it so well. And I in 1999, I'm in my office at Berkeley, and I read this paper that says there's a sex difference in the ratio of fingers that's present in 9-year-old children. What? I've studied sex differences my whole adult life. How do I not know about this? And it turns out that if you measure the length of the second digit,
the pointer finger.
The pointer finger.
For those just listening, yeah.
Right. And the length of the ring finger, and you can do a simple ratio. Divide the length of the second digit by the fourth digit, so-called 2D/4D ratio. And a guy named John Manning was reporting that there's a sex difference there, that that ratio tends to be smaller in men than in women, and that it's present in children. It's like, well, wait a minute. A sex difference in the body that's present before puberty, I know enough about sexual differentiation of the body. It's almost certainly due to prenatal testosterone.
Forgive me for interrupting you, but people are probably looking at their hands right now.
Oh, yes.
And I just want to point out that these are averages.
Yes.
But I think the 2D, 4D thing, for people that aren't familiar, even though you explained it quite clearly, can be a little confusing. Basically, in men, the finger lengths are more different than they are in women, and there are some differences in that statement according to sexual orientation that we'll get into.
Right.
But when you say in other words, the typical heterosexual male pattern is that the pointer finger, right, is shorter than the ring finger.
Right. Right.
Whereas in women, they tend to be more similar.
That's
Again,
right.
These are averages. And not to give it away, but this is because people are looking at their fingers right now.
Yes. Let me just say, don't panic.
Yeah, right.
We're gonna walk you through this. You're gonna be fine.
And the difference between men and women is more pronounced on the right hand, as I recall.
That's true too.
Did I earn my authorship on the paper?
That and the fact that you persuaded so many people to answer our weird questions and let us see you rock their hands.
Okay, so please continue. But I know that the moment that came out, hopefully there were no car accidents and people were driving.